we're going to be talking about the UX of you. So we've all heard the term CX, customer experience, UX, user experience. We talk a lot about how to improve experiences for apps and for businesses and services, but we don't actually often think about how to improve our own experiences for ourselves. So the first thing you should know, if you don't know a little bit about me, just this is who I am. So I started and built Digital Surgeons from my dorm room at UConn, where it really just started as a dream back in the day. And now we are a multi-million-dollar demand design consultancy. We work with clients all over the world, from startups coming out of the garage all the way up to Fortune 50 organizations. As a result of that, in building that business over the past 16 plus years, I then, with my partners and I, we built and launched the technology and innovation campus called District, which we call home from a headquarters perspective. We've got an in-house content studio, a podcast studio, and then our agency and consultancy sits inside there as well. From there, we went on to really be focused on creating a community, an inclusive community. And that's where we went and started the nonprofit District Arts and Education, where we really, our goal is to change the face of technology jobs and education, to create opportunity for folks that don't have as much privilege as I had coming up to be able to get into these spaces. Because the more we can make these spaces more inclusive, the more we can welcome more people into tech, the more that we will have diversity in thought and diversity of all shapes, sizes, and kinds. And what that's going to lead to is better ideas and better thinking and more movement and impact in the world. So then from there, that got me into thinking about, well, how do we think forward? How do we enable teams to create the companies of the future? So if you haven't seen the Digital Surgeons reel, I'll just kind of play it really quick for you folks. This is just a little bit of the kind of, when the sauce gets made, what does that look like? I've been spending a lot of time on TikTok lately, and I realized that's a really long video. It didn't feel so long until I've been spending hours a day on TikTok. But all jokes aside, what We Design Demand really means is we are here at Digital Surgeons, all the companies that I'm a part of, we're focused on designing the future. We're focused on designing, building, and transforming companies. And at the end of the day, through a mix of brand experience, growth marketing, and partnership, that's how we do what we do. So ultimately, why am I here with you folks today? Right? I'm here to learn more about who you are and help you learn more about who you are, because that's what the UX of you is all about. I'm here to connect with you and show you that we probably have a lot more things in common than we all realize. And then last but not least, I'm here to share a little bit about my journey with you folks, because everything I shared to some of you, I've done this presentation to college students. I've done it to startup founders. I've done it at large corporations like Pepsi. And everyone sort of hears this part of the presentation. They're like, okay, great. But what's the point? And really the point is that you hear the passion in my voice. You hear how passionate I am about what I do, but it wasn't always that way. Like, this is a photo of me at a really tough time in my life where I was drinking all the time. I got myself unhealthy. I was out of shape. You could see like the redness in my skin here. and I wasn't doing all that good. My mental health was completely fragmented. And this is before COVID. This is before the Great Resignation, when this presentation was created, right? So we all know now these past few years have rocked us even harder, right? They've really challenged us to the core. They've brought a lot of us to our knees. And luckily, I consider myself blessed to be in the situation I'm in right now, when I know a lot of my friends and colleagues and solopreneurs that had to close their businesses during COVID. And we see some of you folks that in your local communities, just how our local communities have been affected. So it gets us into this sort of doom loop that we often scroll through on social media. And I'm reminded of this music video, which I really, really love, and this quote that comes from this song. So first person to guess it is gets a little prize here.
Bittersweet Symphony.
Oh, you got me. Nice. I love that, because I think that here this person is walking down the street. They're in their own head. They're completely oblivious to other people. You know, they're knocking people over. They're walking. They're obviously not well. You can see that based on the fact that and how they're behaving. And then this mindset that we all have is like, no, I can't change. This is who I am. I'm in my mold. Companies think they can't change. People think they can't change. And I don't know, just from a show of hands, have you ever felt like you're just on the hamster wheel in life, just running forward at full speed, but not going anywhere? Like, yeah, I've felt that way. We've all felt that way in some cases. So the concept I want to first introduce you folks to is this idea here. So just what do we see here on the screen? What's the object we see here on the screen?
Thermometer.
Right. So what a thermometer does is it reacts to its environment. Its job is to simply, as a product, its job is to simply tell the temperature of what it is in the room. And we've all seen this sort of old school thermometer or a new school digital thermometer. And what a thermometer does is it reacts to its environment. It doesn't respond. And when we as people, when we as leaders, when we as organizations react to the environment as opposed to responding to it, all we're simply doing is getting ourselves back in the situation that got us on that hamster wheel in the first place. What I want you to think about from this conversation moving forward is I want you to think more like a thermostat. So this is a Nest, it's a connected thermostat. The difference between a thermostat and a thermometer is a thermostat sets the pace of its environment, and the environment responds to the pace that gets set from the thermometer. So the way that each and every one of us show up every single day in our lives, in our work, in all the things that we do, we have a choice as to what environment we're going to create and the environments we're going to contribute to or not contribute to. We all have that choice. So really what I'm talking about here is a big concept. I do a lot of design thinking. If you're not familiar with design thinking, it's basically observation and creative problem solving using the scientific method, right? So I think if this happens, this will happen. This is my hypothesis. I do it, I test it, I learn from it, and then I make my changes and my tweaks, right? It's been around for a really long time. There's lots of fancy terms on it. But at the most core level, what I'm talking about here today, folks, is I'm talking about changing your frame. And when you change the frame and when you stop behaving like a thermometer and you start behaving like a thermostat, your frame will change and everything around you will change. So what I'm asking you all folks to do is really be the change that you seek and want in the world. And when we first met, we talked a little bit about this concept of ikigai. We talked about this idea of a reason for living, a reason for being. And this concept comes from Okinawa, Japan, originally when it's sourced back. It's a Japanese concept. And really the original meaning for it was all around a personal raison d'etre. And it actually had nothing to do with work at all. But as a design thinker, as a strategist, I couldn't help but take and evolve this concept. Growing up, I was very big into martial arts. Later in my life, as you can see from the backdrop here, I've gotten really spiritual. I've gotten really into meditation. And there's a lot of aspects in sort of Zen that come out of these concepts. So I want to be careful to pay homage to the original concept, to say this is not an original concept. I am not of Japanese descendant, but this concept really inspired me, because how it's inspired me is this idea of creating this sense of passion and mission, profession, vocation, and where they all intersect. And I think a lot about that intersection. One of my favorite quotes is a quote from Mark Twain, where he says, the two most important days in your life are the day that you're born and the day that you know why. And for me, I think we've all lost a sense of who we are well before COVID, right? As we shift from, what did you folks want to be when you grew up, right? Maybe an astronaut, maybe a firefighter, maybe a policeman, who knows? But the reality is none of us are doing those things that we wanted to do when we were little kids. Almost none of us. I talk to hundreds of people in these audiences when I'm speaking, and I go around the room and I ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know. What did you folks want to be when you grew up, when you were kids?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So it's funny that you say that. And it, throughout COVID and even a bit before that, like 2018, 2019, when my wife and I decided to have our first child, I did a lot of self-reflecting. And I realized that early on, my goals were extremely small. Like when I was younger, my idea of living big was I wanted to live in a big building, have a son, and work in a creative field. Like I just saw that as like it. And I was able to do that. And when that happened, aside from having a son, because my son came in my 30s, I was like, there has to be much more to this. And so it really challenged me to think like, what is, if you can hit the mark and then you've got to that point, what else is there? So start to think about like, what is the purpose? And like, why am I here? What am I doing to fulfill it? And so, there's a lot of things for me. I'm just like, every day's opportunity is to be effing legendary.
Love that.
Like, so I don't know. It's weird, but I through this kind of thinking, you can also be in a space where like your thoughts that you had when you were a kid were super small. And it's like a fishbowl perspective of like everyone in my area thought small too, because there was no one to push you like, hey, think bigger. It's like, that's a big idea to live in a big building. No one lives in a big building here. No one, no one is successful in business here. Everyone's kind of, not to working a job, but like, there's just a lot of blue collar where I'm from. And so like, even the work corporate, it was like, oh, that's a big push, and you do it. And it's just like, all right, now I'm here.
Context is so important. Perspective is important, right? Because the reality is everything you just described wasn't small. It is big, but it depends on your perspective and your context, right? I think the life that you described, the work that you described is amazing, right? For some people that might be everything they ever want and need. And that's amazing, right?
True.
But for some of us, the things that we want to become, the aspirations we have are shaped by the environments we come from. Where we come from, the people we're around, the things we see in popular culture and in movies, TV shows, etc. How about you? What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a professional basketball player.
Love it. I love it. And I'm guessing you're not a professional basketball player now.
Overseas.
Nice. Well done. So this concept I think is really amazing. And just, again, back to a little bit about me. So I grew up, I was a really kind of scrawny, geeky kid. This is me in the back of the bus on my Washington, D.C. middle school trip. And I'm by myself. I've got my headphones on. I'm right next to the bathroom, which was obviously not the best seat in the house, but I was by myself. So that's really where I discovered this concept of and I started to really think about this idea of intersection. And as a creative, all creativity is, as Steve Jobs said, is looking and connecting the dots, right? So when I think about like the design inspiration behind a thing like this, ultimately my ikigai is like, how do all of us, how do I give that gift to everybody? So what I started thinking as a designer myself is, how do I help others design their Ikigai? When people are feeling like they're on that hamster wheel, how do I help and contribute to get them off of that hamster wheel? So I started thinking about some thinking frameworks, much like thinking differently about a thermometer or a thermostat. These are very basic things that all of us can understand and we can all take action on. So I came up with this concept, which has been being used and taught for a couple of years, called the sawdust principle. So I'm going to really quickly talk you through it. It's an original thought I have. So I don't know if you folks have ever watched ASMR videos. They're like super satisfying and kind of chill. I love this video because you're just hearing what it's like to be a maker and kind of scratching away and etching away at this wood. And back to the concept that you said earlier about living in a big building, this thing that this person's carving could be anything because the context is so zoomed in here. We don't know what this is. And as you sort of like start to understand what this craft is and how it starts to evolve, it's a journey, and it's focusing on that journey and it's paying homage to that journey. Where did this block of wood start from? Started from a tree before, unfortunately, someone cut that down. What is this woodworker doing? So as you start to sort of look at this, I'm going to let you guys guess what it says, and we're going to come back to that in the end. No spoilers. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a quick little exercise together. And what we're going to do is, if you have a piece of paper and a pen, grab one. If you don't, it's okay. You can use your phone. But what we're going to do, if you've got a piece of paper and a pen, is we're going to have you make a list of things in the left column that you're good at. I've put a list of things here because some of you might have backgrounds in things like photography or things of that sort, as we know, right? But make a list of the things that you believe you're really good at, and just start jotting those down. And then what we're going to have you do after that is we're going to have you write down what are some things that people need and want in the world. It's really popular now to have a side hustle. It's really popular now to be doing different things. When I first came up with this framework, side hustles were seen as a faux pas. This is, pre-Great Resignation, pre-COVID. So just for those of you that might not have done an exercise like this, I'll just show you what that manifests as, just to give you guys a little bit of inspiration. So let's assume I'm good at software development and UX design, two things that happen to be in my background. And let's assume that people want and need better digital collaboration. I might go and I might start or build a product like Miro, which we've all used, right? Miro is, for those of you that haven't used it, it's a digital whiteboarding tool, allows you to brainstorm in the cloud. Miro has single-handedly, much like Zoom, the tool we're on right now, has single-handedly transformed companies' abilities to perform when we all had the massive shutdown with the pandemic. If it wasn't for tools like Zoom and WebEx and Miro, jobs that could only be performed previously from offices would not be able to be performed. So what you can start to see here is how, when you look at the things that you're good at and you look at the things that people need and want in the world, and you combine them together, you can start to create sawdust into new successes. So here's 3 examples of someone taking their sawdust. Miro is a great example. We just talked about Notion. Literally, fun homework assignment, dig up the origin story of how Notion came to be. It'll blow your mind. I'm not going to ruin it for you because I want you to search for it yourself. Or Craft CMS, which is a popular content management platform that we design and build on. The developer had worked with companies like Apple and a bunch of other things and just saw a better way to do content management systems. And as a software engineer, it was a great way to do that. So now we're going to do it together. So I put some examples of some needs and wants in the world. And you can certainly write your own list in there in the fill in the blank. And I'm going to give us a quick 5 minutes right now to have you folks do it. So what I want you to do is I want you to first exhaust the list of all the things you're good at. Then take a quick breath. Then exhaust the list of things people want. And what I want you to try to do is I want you to combine the things from column A and the things from column B, left and right, to invent an entirely new thing. That new thing could be a hobby. That new thing could be a business. That new thing could be something you do at your daily job and work. What I want you to do is combine something you're good at with something that people need and want and create something new from that combination. Make sense? So how do we do?
It was harder than I thought.
What was hard about it?
The people, like, thinking about what people want, not trying to like take that all of the ideas that you had listed on there, trying to come up with something new.
That's okay. Did you take a stab at using some of the ones on the list?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I did that to kind of help me get the ball rolling, and then
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Do you want to share what you came up with?
Sure.
Cool.
So under what I'm good at, I had language, being that I'm bilingual, so I'm fluent in 2 languages. I had communication, empathy, and analytical skills.
Love it. So when you combine those together, what did you unlock?
So on the other side, it was, about technology, ease of use or efficiency, and things that are delivered fast. So, some sort of, and I believe there's services like this already, but translation services of some sort, but more of like a human touch to it than just like spew what you need. Like for instances where if it's like a legal document for, I don't know, an immigrant who's filing to become a citizen of the US, they've lived here for 60 years and they need someone to not only translate, but understand their story and that. So something along those lines.
No, I love that. What shows up for me there is like, I know you shared with me a while ago that you're into sports, and obviously having a sense of family and community is important to you, something that you also shared. So when I think about the combination of that, wouldn't it be great if you partner with a technologist and maybe at live sporting events, when you had people who didn't speak the native language of the announcer, what if you created a service that converted the native speaking of the announcer to something that someone could listen to on their phones if they're at a live sporting event, or something that can bring people into a sporting event together? That would be like a sport tech, type of startup. That might be fun for you, right? Or what if you built a business where, like Uber, people could request to work with, if you're an immigrant that's looking to get your citizenship or maybe learn English as a second language, what if they could completely book that Uberified online and work with a whole network of people that are bilingual like you and able to make extra money on the side, helping them learn a new language and get through that? Would that be something that might be useful for you and your communities and constituents?
Yeah, definitely, especially here in my community here, where there is predominant Latino or Spanish speaking community here. So
love that. So you can see really quickly here, all I did was listen to what you were saying, and together now we're co-creating, we're building, and we're stacking, we're design thinking new ideas. Mm-hmm. So just building, and the idea of like yes and to get to new ideas. And then someone else might jump in, and now we're building together. And that's what we do at Digital Surgeons all day, every day. So my challenge to everyone in the room now and who watch this in the future, how do you do it for yourself? So any other things that you want to share, or should we kind of go around the room?
Just kind of like the first item you mentioned was like a good coincidence, because I was at a basketball game last night at the Knicks game, Knicks Hornets, and it was like French night. So there was like so many French people in the audience, and I'd imagine they had no idea what the announcer was saying. So I know a lot of them speak English, but I'm sure some of them could have used the help for parts of the show. So I just thought that was pretty cool that you mentioned it, and it was, yeah.
Oui.
How about you? You want to share?
Yeah. So for the left column, well, first, one thing I kind of realized after it was done was that I went to a really human place with people want and need kind of thing, which is interesting. I didn't intend to go that way. At looking at the list, it's very human, very, very personal. But on the left side of it, it was like motivating, storytelling, listening, ideation, communicating, problem solving, curating, entertaining, and being objective.
Nice.
And then on the right side, things I think that people want or need, to be heard, to be advocated for, to have their ideas listened to, which can be a bit different from just being heard. confidence, to be seen, to have some carefree moments, to have a bit of freedom, community, and access.
Nice. I like that. So now when you combine those together, what are some of the things that showed up for you?
Like kind of bringing people together. So having some like community events. I thought about like some kind of product similar to like a Greetable, but a bit more personal, that can be like say you like lead a team and you have a lot of people on your team, and usually when something happens, like, oh, it's a birthday, you get a cake, get a card passed around, but like when people are doing things and you want to acknowledge them, you could like have like how we have like the human survey here at DS, using some of that information and creating like a specific box for them, like things that kind of encourage them, acknowledge where they are, acknowledge where they want to go, some things that are like really nice to have, so that they can feel acknowledged, seen, heard, all these other things. I thought about some kind of bridging thing where you bring people together, people who want community, who want to be heard, who might be shy, but have some really great things to say, but don't know how to. And like some sort of coaching, not maybe myself, I'm not a coach, but just understanding that people sometimes do better when they have some positive reinforcements or something like that.
So I love that. I want to build on something you said. So you talked a lot about curation in some of your skill sets. Wouldn't it be great if there was an app like Tinder that would pair you based on the interests you have with local community events where you can meet like-minded people and get together?
Yeah, that would be amazing, actually, because then it allows you to kind of like, oh, okay, I'm interested in this, and it's something people are already into in terms of like the way that they move through Tinder and things like that. Yeah.
And I know your background is a little bit in photography. What if those interests and how you represented them were all thoughtfully curated from some of the documentary style photography that you've done in your work?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we've got our next $1 billion idea, man.
I mean, it happened here, right?
It happened here. That's awesome. So clearly, I think we all know the answer to the question, how'd you do? You guys did awesome. So anything you folks want to add or anything before we keep moving?
No, this is a great exercise. It's super eye-opening. This would be a great like offsite teams building thing, like just.
Oh, you mean for our strategy offsite retreat that we're working on?
Hey.
You just got Jedi mind trick. You didn't even know it. No, that's amazing. That's great feedback. And you should totally share that with Johanna. Let her know about what you experienced today. I'd love for both you folks to share your feedback with her or with your managers. And always love to iterate on this material and that sort of thing. Also, when I send this link out later, there is a link to the downloadable toolkit. So when you're on that exercise, you can download this, print it out, play with it, and spread it around. We want to spread this stuff. Make it free, make it accessible to everyone, because we've all got these really powerful biocomputers that are between our ears. And the more that we realize and lean into it, the more we can do magic things. And really what that gets down to is this concept here, which I'm a big person on mindset. As you can see from the backdrop here, meditation literally saved my life. And that's a long story for another day. But I believe that we are the conductors of our life, and that you are the conductor of your life. And the choices that you make ultimately come down to the question I want you all to think about as you walk away from this presentation today is, are you living your life like a thermometer, or are you living your life like a thermostat? I want you to really reflect on that. What I'll say is, if you're living your life like a thermometer, there might be another way for you. So I'll leave you on that thought. And what I would say is, I love this quote from Henry Ford, right? Kind of a weird old school photo, probably not his best look. We'll have to talk to the design team about getting a younger photo of him in the future. But this is an American inventor, in many ways contributed to the American dream. Really made the concept of weekends were something that got created because of Henry Ford, which most people don't know about. And this quote he says, I think, is really how I live my life and how I try to coach people that I'm mentoring or teams that I'm leading or clients that I'm working with, which is, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. If you wake up and you feel like you're on that hamster wheel and you're in that mold that you can't change, and you can't change, you're going to be oblivious, just like that guy running down the street in that Bittersweet Symphony video. So the thing I want to share with you folks is that if I can do it as the scrawny, introverted, nerdy kid in the back of the bus in the Washington, D.C. trip, if I could go on to be the first kid in my family to go to college, the first person in my family to learn to code, the first person in my family to run a business and get out of a blue collar ecosystem, which is the world I grew up in. My dad was a union guy. My mom was a secretary, and my mom stopped working when she had me and my brother. If I could do it and go on to then be at the Webby Awards, winning the Webby Award, working with Lady Gaga here with my co-founder, going on to invest in a game-changing IoT company in the golf space. What got me to that point and the right, which really was ultimately the unhappiness, is because I was living my life like a thermometer. So when I woke up and I found that thermostat, when I woke up and found that self-care routine and found things like meditation, what I realized is I did that exercise of Ikigai and I found out my intersect is I want to be a force for positive change in people's lives. And I realized that one of the greatest ways to do that is to create a community that others can then participate in. And that's where I went and built District, which is a campus and community focused on the future right here in New Haven, Connecticut. We're now talking about expanding and opening districts in other cities in the country. And I'd imagine by the time I get as old and weathered looking as Henry Ford, if I'm lucky enough to live that long, I would imagine at that point, districts will be all over the world. And more importantly, it's environments and communities like District that I believe will create the communities, create the toolkits so that we can unlock new possibilities. And that's ultimately how I want you folks to think about navigating your UX. What is your life experience? LX, right? If it's a thing. So you're here right now. Again, when I gave this presentation last, this is a pin on the map at University of Connecticut. But right now, you're in Connecticut, you're in New Jersey, other people are in other places all over the world that are watching this. Find that Ikigai. Start out where you're at right now. Go through, process that sawdust, figure out the things in the left and the right column and figure out how they come together. And then ultimately optimize your experience to turn that intersect, that overlap of the Venn diagram into a new reality. So I leave you on the question and I say, what's your path forward?